The Galactic Council. In the Grand Council chambers of the Zorbaxian Galactic Empire, tensions were high. Representatives from across the Empire's vast expanse of star systems had been urgently summoned by the Emperor himself. Confusion and concern rippled through the gathered dignitaries. An emergency convening of the full council was exceedingly rare. Emperor Zorvax II entered, his presence commanding immediate silence. His expression was grave as he took his place on the obsidian throne. "We face an unprecedented situation," the Emperor began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "A primitive species from an obscure world has achieved faster-than-light capability." Murmurs of disbelief filled the room. Such an advancement by a fledgling civilization was unheard of. The implications were alarming. Admiral Zalgoth spoke up. "Surely they are of no real concern to us, Your Eminence. The Empire's might remains unchallenged." The Emperor fixed Zalgoth with an icy stare. "Do not be so quick to dismiss them, Admiral. The species is called human, and our deepest laws are clear. Any civilization that achieves FTL represents a potential threat to be extinguished. I recommend we dispatch the fleet immediately, Sire," General Zorg said. "We can eliminate." The Emperor raised a hand, silencing him. "No, the humans present a unique case. Before we take any permanent actions, I believe a warning is in order. Let us see how they respond in the face of our power. Ready a transmission and mobilize the fleet." As the council dispatched to carry out the Emperor's commands, an uneasy dread settled over all. They could only hope these humans recognize the futility of defiance. The Empire's protocol. In a secure chamber deep within the Zorbaxian throne world, the Empire's most influential leaders gathered. The 12 High Counselors, resplendent in their formal robes, arranged themselves around a massive holographic star map. "The human situation requires delicate handling," Counselor Zane began. "But we must remain true to our most sacred law, preemptive elimination of potential threats." "They are primitives," scoffed Counselor Zorax. "Humans could no more threaten us than an insect could topple a mountain." "You forget our own history," Zane chided. "Eons ago, we too were primitives. And look at us now, masters of the galaxy. We cannot afford to underestimate them." The Emperor entered, prompting the council to fall silent. "You speak wisdom, Zane," he said. "The humans must be given a chance to prostrate themselves, but we must also be prepared for the alternative." With a wave of his hand, the Emperor summoned a shimmering projection, a massive war fleet, tens of thousands strong. The assembled ships were the pinnacle of Zorbaxian engineering, each one capable of reducing a planet to molten slag. "Behold the might of the Zorbaxian war machine," the Emperor declared. "Should the humans foolishly choose defiance, they will bear witness to its full unleashing." The counselors nodded in grim approval. The Empire did not make idle threats. The humans would submit, or they would burn. Such was the way of things. The strong prospered while the weak perished. Still, an unfamiliar unease flickered in the Emperor's hearts. There was something about these distant, insignificant creatures, an unknown factor that gnawed at the edges of his mind. He could only pray to the dark gods that the humans would see reason. For if they did not, he had a dire premonition that the galaxy would soon tremble with the fury of total war. Humanity's discovery. Dr. Eliza Singh stared at the pulsing signal on her monitor in disbelief. The SETI program had spent decades searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, but she had never imagined she would be the one to actually find it. This can't be right," she muttered, checking and rechecking the signal's authenticity. But there was no mistake. The transmission was real, and it was coming from beyond the solar system. With a trembling hand, Eliza picked up the phone and dialed her supervisor. "Sir, you need to see this right away. I think we've made first contact." Within hours, the small SETI facility was swarming with government agents and top military brass. Eliza found herself side by side with generals and intelligence directors as they pored over the signal. The transmission is incredibly complex, Eliza explained. It will take time to decode, but the language appears to be threatening. General Marcus Greco frowned. Threatening how? From what we can gather so far, the message is a warning. An ultimatum from something called the Zorbaxian Empire, demanding our submission. Silence fell over the room as the gravity of the situation sank in. Humanity had always speculated about the existence of alien life, but to have their first contact be a hostile one, it defied belief. A fierce debate erupted among the officials. Some advocated for an immediate diplomatic response, others for mobilizing Earth's defenses. But Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that they were all in over their heads. "What do you think we should do, Dr. Singh?" General Greco asked. Eliza took a deep breath. I think we need to be very careful. We're dealing with an unknown, technologically advanced civilization. Every move we make could have profound consequences." The general nodded grimly. "Agreed. But we must make a decision, and soon. If this Zorbaxian empire is as hostile as they seem, diplomacy may not be an option." As the arguments raged on, Eliza stared at the alien signal on her screen. In that pulsing, cryptic message, she saw the future of her species hanging in the balance. The choices made in the coming days would echo through the ages to come. She could only hope that when the time came, humanity would rise to the challenge. The warning delivered. The Zorbaxian transmission came without warning, overriding every television and radio signal on Earth. Across the planet, billions of people were greeted by the imperious visage of Emperor Zorvax II. "People of Earth," the Emperor began, his voice resonating with ancient power. "We are the Zorbaxian Galactic Empire, rightful rulers of the cosmos. Your species has taken its first fledgling steps into the stars, steps that have not gone unnoticed." Panic gripped the hearts of many as they realized the implications. Humanity was not alone, and their cosmic neighbors were far from friendly. "By achieving faster-than-light travel, you have marked yourselves as a potential threat to our dominion," the Emperor continued. "And the Empire suffers no threats." Images of the Zorbaxian fleet flickered across screens. Thousands of warships, each one dwarfing the mightiest human vessel. Their destructive potential was terrifyingly evident. "However, in our boundless mercy, we offer you a choice. Submit to our rule, and you shall be spared. Resist." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "And burn." With that, the transmission cut out, leaving a world in chaos. People flooded the streets in mass hysteria. Governments scrambled to make sense of the situation and formulate a response. In the White House Situation Room, the President and her top advisors watched the message replay on a loop. This can't be real," the Secretary of Defense muttered, his face ashen. "A damned alien empire threatening invasion. It's like something out of a bad science fiction novel." "It's very real," said the National Security Advisor. "And we need to decide how to respond. Now." The President remained silent, her gaze fixed on the frozen image of the Zorbaxian Emperor. In his eyes, she saw only cold, implacable resolve. The eyes of a conqueror. "Get me the UN Security Council, NATO Command, and the heads of every major nation," she finally said. "If we're facing invasion, then the only chance humanity has is to stand together. It's time to put old conflicts aside and unite in the face of a common threat." As the room burst into action, the President took one last long look at the Emperor's image. "And somebody find me the brightest minds on the planet. If we're going to fight these bastards, then we need every brilliant idea and crazy scheme we can get." She had the sinking feeling humanity was going to need them. Humanity united. The UN General Assembly Hall was a sea of tense faces and hushed whispers. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered, summoned by the dreadful message from the stars. As the Secretary General called the assembly to order, the anxiety was palpable. Mankind had always dreamed of contact with alien life. But never in their darkest nightmares had they imagined it would come like this. "We stand at a pivotal moment in human history," the Secretary General began, her voice heavy with the weight of her words. "An extraterrestrial power has issued us an ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. We must decide, here and now, how we will respond." A clamor of voices erupted, each representative clamoring to be heard. Some advocated for surrender, arguing that resistance against such an advanced foe was futile. Others pounded the tables and shouted for defiance, declaring that human freedom was more precious than life itself. The debate raged for hours, a cacophony of fear, anger, and desperate hope. But as the din reached a fever pitch, a lone voice cut through the chaos. "We do not have the luxury of division." It was the President of the United States, her eyes blazing with fierce determination. "Nor can we afford the cowardice of surrender. The Zorbaxian Empire has offered us an impossible choice, to live as slaves or die on our feet." A hush fell over the assembly as all eyes turned to her. "I say we forge a third path. I say we fight." The President's voice rang out like a clarion call. "Not as disparate nations, but as one united Earth. Together we have achieved wonders. Walked on the moon, cured diseases, explored the depths of the atom. Now let us turn that indomitable human spirit towards our own survival and freedom." A roar of approval shook the hall. In that moment, the will of humanity crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. Within days, an unprecedented global mobilization was underway. Militaries pooled their might, forming a unified Earth Defense Force. Scientists and engineers from every nation poured their genius into the development of new weapons and defenses. The media rallied the public, fostering an unbreakable spirit of unity and determination. But even as humanity girded itself for the fight of its life, they knew the odds were stacked against them. The Zorbaxian Empire commanded technology centuries beyond their own, and a military hardened by millennia of conquest. Earth would fight, oh yes, but whether they could triumph against such staggering odds remained to be seen. All they had was their courage, their ingenuity, and the stubborn human refusal to submit. In the face of annihilation, it would have to be enough. The Empire strikes. The Zorbaxian warfleet dropped out of hyperspace on the edges of the Sol system, their arrival sending shockwaves of dread across the planet below. The ships were monstrous, city-sized battlecruisers bristling with weaponry, sleek destroyers that sliced through space like sharks' fins, and a command dreadnought that dwarfed them all. On the bridge of the dreadnought, Emperor Zorvax III brooded on his throne. The humans had failed to submit by his deadline, a defiance that both enraged and intrigued him. In all his long centuries, no species had dared to defy the Empire so brazenly. "They spit on our generous offer," the Emperor growled. "Let them choke on the consequences. All ships, begin the assault." Zorbaxian warships surged towards Earth, their weapons charging with malevolent energies. But as they entered orbit, they were met with an unexpected sight. A web of glinting metal, thousands of satellites interconnected into a makeshift planetary defense grid. Kinetic harpoons and focused laser arrays lashed out from the satellite swarm, slamming into the Zorbaxian shields. The impacts rocked the mighty ships, disrupting their formations. "What is this?" Admiral Zalgoth snarled. "Some primitive trick. Sweep those gnats aside and commence planetary bombardment." But even as the Zorbaxians blasted away the Earth defenses, new threats were emerging. Squadrons of small, heavily armed fighter drones swarmed up from hidden launch sites, peppering the warships with a hail of missiles and autocannon fire. On the ground, hastily assembled artillery batteries unleashed storms of shells and masers, forcing the Zorbaxians to divert their attention to counter-battery fire. Across the planet, 1 billion soldiers and civilian militia stood ready, armed not just with weapons, but with the grim determination that only those fighting for their home and survival could muster. The Zorbaxians had expected a swift, crushing victory over a cowed and broken foe. Instead, they found themselves mired in a hellish war of attrition, bleeding from 1,000 cuts inflicted by a species that refused to bow. Back on the command ship, the Emperor watched the battle unfold with a mixture of fury and grudging respect. The humans were innovative, their resistance brilliantly calculated to exploit Zorbaxian overconfidence. Their defeat was inevitable, but they would make the Empire pay in blood for every inch of their world. Perhaps we have underestimated these humans, the Emperor mused darkly. No matter. Redouble the assault. Raze their cities. Shatter their resolve. I want them to understand the price of defiance before we grind them to dust beneath our heel. The Zorbaxian fleet intensified their assault, heedless of losses, determined to make an example of this upstart species. Orbital bombardments pounded Earth's surface, turning proud cities to smoldering ruins. But even as they died in droves, the humans fought on with a savage tenacity, determined to make their would-be conquerors bleed. They would not go quietly into oblivion. And in the heart of every man, woman, and child was a spark of hope. The desperate faith that as long as one human still drew breath, resistance would endure. The tide turns. In the depths of a rocky mountain bunker complex, the tattered remains of Earth's leadership gathered. The Zorbaxian onslaught had been devastating. The surface of the planet now pockmarked with glowing craters, the grand cities of humanity reduced to shattered wastelands. Billions had perished in the opening days of the assault. Yet incredibly, impossibly, the human race endured. The Zorbaxians had won almost every battle, but the war raged on. For every human ship they destroyed, a dozen jury-rigged strike craft rose to harry the invaders. For every resistance cell they crushed, a dozen more sprang up like Hydra's heads. Our losses are catastrophic, General Greco said, his voice heavy with fatigue and grief. But the Zorbaxians are bleeding too. Their conquest is turning into a nightmare insurgency, and it's taking a toll. President Salazar nodded grimly. They're not used to a prey that fights back. Our analysts have intercepted Imperial transmissions. The High Command is in disarray, struggling to adapt to our tactics. Even the Emperor seems shaken. Dr. Singh stepped forward, a gleam of hope in her eyes. There may be a chance, a desperate one, but a chance nonetheless. Our science division has been analyzing Zorbaxian technology, trying to find a weakness, and we think we found one. She activated a holographic display, showing a pulsing network of energy conduits. This is the power core of a Zorbaxian dreadnought. We believe a precisely calibrated EM pulse delivered here could trigger a chain reaction, disabling or even destroying the ship. General Greco frowned. That's all well and good, Doctor, but how do you propose we get such a pulse past their shields? Dr. Singh smiled grimly. We don't. We let them take it in willingly. She outlined a daring plan. A Trojan horse strike, sneaking the EMP aboard a captured Zorbaxian ship, then flying it directly into the heart of their fleet. It was a desperate gambit, one likely to end in the deaths of all involved. But if it worked, if they could cripple the Zorbaxian flagship, strike a blow directly at the Emperor himself, it could buy Earth precious time. President Salazar closed her eyes, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. So many had already sacrificed so much. Could she ask more to give their lives on such a slender hope? But in the end, there was no choice. Fight or submit. Those were the only paths. Do it, the president ordered. And may the fortitude of all the heroes of Earth go with you. The strike team knew their